If aliens built the pyramids, they did a really bad job. Because we have the receipts. We have the workers' payroll. We have their beer rations. We have their medical records. We even have their sick days. Somewhere along the way, the most well-documented construction project in the ancient world turned into the most popular conspiracy theory on the internet. So today, we're not guessing. We're not speculating. We're walking through exactly how a civilization with no iron tools, no wheels, and no pulleys moved 2.3 million blocks of stone, some weighing as much as a school bus, and stacked them into a mountain that stayed the tallest structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years. No aliens required. Just really, really smart humans. Here's why the alien theory even took off in the first place, and it's worth understanding, because it's not a totally crazy question. The Great Pyramid of Giza is made of about 2.3 million blocks. The average block weighs 2.5 tons. Some of the granite blocks inside the burial chamber weigh over 80 tons, that's heavier than a fully loaded semi-truck. And it was built around 2560 BCE, more than 4,500 years ago, using Bronze Age tools. No wheels. No pulleys, those came later. No iron. Just copper chisels, wooden tools, rope, and an enormous amount of manpower and planning. For a long time, we genuinely didn't have great physical evidence of how it was done. And when there's a gap in the evidence, people fill it with something dramatic. That's exactly what happened in 1968, when a Swiss author named Erich von Daniken published a book claiming ancient monuments were built with help from extraterrestrials. The book sold over 60 million copies. It's the single biggest reason this myth won't die. But here's the thing, since the 1990s, archaeologists have found the missing piece. Not aliens. A city. In 1990, a tourist's horse stumbled into a hole in the desert near the pyramids. That hole led archaeologists to something nobody expected, an entire buried city. This wasn't a small camp. It's now called the Lost City of the Pyramid Builders, and excavations led by Dr. Zahi Hawass and Dr. Mark Leiner uncovered bakeries, breweries, barracks, and a hospital-like facility, all within walking distance of the construction site. They found bread molds by the thousands. They found evidence of cattle, sheep, and goat bones, meaning workers ate meat regularly, which was actually a privilege in ancient Egypt. They found skeletons with healed broken bones, meaning injured workers were treated and recovered, not discarded. This was not slave labor. This was one of the most organized labor operations in the ancient world, closer to a national infrastructure project than a prison camp. And that discovery is what let historians finally answer the question everyone actually wants to know. How did they move the stones? Step 1. Getting the stone out of the ground. Most of the pyramid's core blocks came from a quarry right there on the Giza Plateau, so they didn't have to travel far. Workers used copper chisels, wooden mallets, and stone hammers called dolerite pounders to break the limestone free. For the harder granite used inside the pyramid, they used an even simpler trick. They'd carve a groove, hammer in dry wooden wedges, then soak the wood with water. As the wood expanded, it cracked the stone clean. Step 2. Moving a 2.5-ton block without wheels. This is the part that used to genuinely stump researchers, until 2014, when a team of physicists at the University of Amsterdam ran an experiment inspired by a wall painting inside an actual Egyptian tomb. The painting showed workers pulling a giant statue on a sledge, and, this is the detail everyone missed for decades, one worker standing at the front of the sledge, pouring water onto the sand. Turns out, wetting the sand in front of a sledge cuts the friction almost in half. Dry desert sand piles up in front of a sledge like a plow pushing snow. But wet the sand just right, and it stiffens the surface, letting the sledge glide. The researchers calculated that this single trick could cut the required workforce to pull a heavy sledge by 50%. So, copper tools to cut the stone, wooden sledges to move it, and water to make the sand cooperate. Already, that's a huge chunk of the mystery solved, and we haven't even gotten to the ramps yet. This is the part historians still debate the small details of, but not the big picture. The leading theory, strongly supported by physical evidence found at the site, is a combination of straight and spiraling ramps. As the pyramid grew taller, workers built ramps out of mud brick, limestone debris, and clay, wrapping them around the outside of the structure or running straight up one face. In 2018, archaeologists discovered a ramp system at an ancient quarry in Hatnub, complete with 2 staircases lined with post holes, evidence that workers used ropes and wooden posts as leverage points, essentially creating a pulley-like system without an actual pulley, hauling blocks up the ramp at a steep incline using teams of men pulling in coordinated rhythm. And this is where the organization becomes just as impressive as the engineering. We know from papyrus logs, actual work diaries discovered at the Red Sea port of Wadi al-Jarf, written by a man named Mirror, that labor was divided into rotating gangs of about 2,000 men, split into smaller teams of around 20, each with a name, like Friends of Khufu. These teams worked in shifts, were fed, housed, and rotated on a schedule, closer to a modern union workforce than a mass of anonymous slaves. It took an estimated 20,000 to 30,000 workers, working over roughly 20 years, to complete the Great Pyramid. Not 100,000 slaves, as Greek historian Herodotus claimed 2,000 years after the fact, a number modern archaeology simply doesn't support. Here's the part that still genuinely impresses modern engineers, and it's not the size, it's the precision. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within about 2 centimeters across its entire 230-meter length. The 4 sides are aligned to true north with an accuracy of within 1/10 of a degree, a level of precision some modern buildings don't even hit. How did they manage that without lasers or satellites? Most likely using simple star-sighting tools and water-filled trenches to check level ground, using the stars and gravity itself as their instruments. It's not magic. It's just extremely careful, patient measurement, repeated by people who had one job and thousands of years of accumulated architectural knowledge behind them. That's the real story. Not a shortcut from outer space, a masterclass in logistics, math, and manpower that took 3 generations of pharaohs and refined techniques to perfect. So let's put it all together. They quarried limestone and granite using copper tools and simple wedge and water techniques. They moved multi-ton blocks on wooden sledges over wet sand, cutting friction dramatically. They hauled those blocks up mud brick ramps using rope, leverage, and coordinated teams. They organized tens of thousands of workers into fed, housed, medically cared for labor gangs with actual names and schedules. And they leveled and aligned the entire structure using nothing but water, string, and the stars. No spaceships. No forgotten super technology. Just one of the most sophisticated logistics operations in the ancient world, built by people who have never gotten enough credit for how genuinely brilliant they were. If this rebuilt your respect for ancient engineers as much as it did mine, that's exactly the kind of that's actually genius history I make videos about every week. So if you haven't already, subscribe, because next week I'm covering another ancient mystery that has a real answer nobody talks about. Now here's a question for the comments: which ancient achievement do you think still doesn't get enough credit? Stonehenge? The Nazca Lines? The Roman aqueducts? Drop it below, I read every comment, and the best one might become the next video on this channel.